Welcome back to the Joust About Careers podcast. This is the place to learn about careers from the people who are actually doing the work every day. I'm your host, Brian Bratt, and this week's guest is 2010 Van Buren graduate Madison Schwable, a speech language pathologist at the Hancock County Education Service Center. In this episode, Madison shares how a typical day looks for a speech language pathologist, the places where people in this field can work, the feeling of fulfillment which comes from this career, and much more. Whether you are interested in a career as a speech language pathologist or are still exploring your options, I hope that what Madison shares today will help all of you make better career decisions and have fulfilling career journeys. Enjoy the show. Madison, thank you very much for joining us today. And I'd like to start by just asking how a typical day looks for a speech language pathologist.
So I guess a typical day for me, we have a schedule that we make at the beginning of each school year, and that's when we plan to pull kids. And I normally follow that pretty closely, but there are days, as you know, working in a school where things don't always pan out that way. But so I usually just kind of grab kids, and then I have a break here and there to maybe test kids if I need to, or write reports or meet with teachers. That kind of stuff, I guess.
Okay. So a lot of variety from day to day. You
Yep.
just never know what's going to happen.
Yep.
Do you go into classrooms? Do students come to you? Do you do a little bit of both?
Not typically. Typically, I pull them. I have like a small classroom, so I pull them to my classroom just because it's a lot easier to get something done with like 3 kids instead of 20. So typically that's what I do. Occasionally, I will pull in. I'm also in some of our like multiple disability units and behavior units. So those classrooms I might, but even those, it's better to just get them individually.
Now, I know my niece, when she was young, could not say her L's.
Mm.
So, we obviously got some good laughs,
Yeah.
Mary had a
Yes.
yiddo yam and things like that.
Yeah.
Is that really the big thing you're doing is, I think so many kids, for whatever reason, have those difficulties with certain words. And
Yeah.
now, she speaks perfectly.
Right.
And, so how does that look for you? And I guess what are some of the things that you have to do on a daily basis to help those students?
Yeah. So just in general speech, we always say is from like the neck up. So a lot of it is speech where we're saying sounds right, but also we can work on like their language, following directions, even their social pragmatic. So if they're understanding certain situations, or even like in a nursing home, I worked there for a while and we did a lot of swallowing. So that, or stroke patients, those kinds of things. But for anything in life, there's a certain expected age that people are supposed to be able to do things by. So sounds works the same way. So L, when they're 3, is completely normal because it's a harder word. But as they get to like 6 and 7, then that's when it maybe becomes more of an issue. So a lot of times, if like a teacher has a concern, I guess they'll tell me, and then they get the parent permission for me to look at them. And then from then we kind of decide, okay, they do have a lot of errors that maybe aren't normal for their age. Whereas they're in kindergarten, if they're doing like TH and like L, like those I don't worry about because that's normal for that age. But if they're getting older, and it's a lot of kids start to spell the way they talk. So then when they're starting to do that, then it's for sure impacting them like academically, because that's what we have to look for too.
Right. You have quite a few letters after your name. You've got CCC-SLP. Can you talk a little bit about what all of those represent?
After we graduate grad school, we have to do, it's called a clinical fellowship year. So we're not technically fully licensed, but I basically was on my own. I just had a supervisor that we met with once a month to talk about, this is what you can improve on, or if I had questions or things like that. And then once you do that year, you get your certificate of clinical competence, which is CCC. So then that basically means you're fully licensed and you can completely work on your own. So
okay. So the SLP is the speech language pathologist.
Yep.
Okay. As you think back to when you were in high school, Have you always thought that you would be a speech language pathologist, or where did that start to be an option for you?
So I had speech when I was in grade school. I couldn't say my R's. So, and I loved it. Like it was, I still talk about it because some of the SLPs I work with actually knew my SLP.
Mm.
She used to do bring a friend to speech day, and it was like my favorite day, and everyone wanted to come with me. So like, it just was a really, like, I never saw it as like a bad thing to go to. So I try to make my kids feel that way too. So I always liked it. I wanted to do something kind of medical, and but I don't like blood. So like I knew I couldn't do that. And I'm not great at like math and science. So my mom was like, what about a speech therapist? So that I was undecided, but either doing social work or speech. And then kind of as I took classes that were related to speech, I liked it. And then I realized I can do a lot more than just work in a school. So that
Right,
was cool.
right. Now, you ended up with your master's degree. Is
Yep.
there a pathway to employment in speech pathology without a master's degree, or do you really need to get that advanced
Yeah.
degree?
You need it now. There are some states that allow like an SLP assistant. So an SLPA, like I think Illinois does. There's some states, but Ohio doesn't. So you have to have a master's degree um, to work. The one I was hired in about 5 years ago, and the one who retired before me didn't have her master's degree, like was grandfathered in. But everyone I work with now, you have to have it.
Now, do you also have to do continuing education,
Yep.
or are there steps beyond where you currently are that you need to eventually attain, or is it more just optional going forward?
It's I have to do CEU, so yeah, but if I everything else would just be optional. Like I think if I want to teach eventually, I'd have to do a doctorate, but
Okay.
there we don't need that to
Right,
practice.
right, right. Now, you've worked with a wide range of ages. So, like you said, you worked with senior citizens. Now you're
Mhm.
obviously in an elementary school. Is that typical? Do people typically go into this field saying, I'm going to work with younger kids, older people, or is it, again, one of those things that most people don't really care which they work with because they're doing similar tasks, whether it's a
Right.
child or a senior citizen?
Um, I don't know. I think a lot of people go into it thinking they're going to work in a school because that's all you know. Like I didn't realize the speech therapist worked in so many environments.
Mm-hmm.
After graduate school, I knew I wanted to do a nursing home or adult population. I really enjoyed it. And someone told me um once when I was like job searching, they were like, you lose a lot of because medical is so kind of intense and you're teaching people how to it's like some people aren't able to eat and you're teaching them to eat normal food again, so like it's kind of nerve-wracking, I guess. And they're like, if you lose that start to once you stop practicing that. And so I kind of took that because I was like, you're right. So that's kind of why I chose that route.
Mm-hmm.
And then which I had some classmates that like they did not want to work at all in a school, and then others who thought the opposite. But and then once I just didn't enjoy I just what I always knew I'd end up in a school. That's kind of what my end all goal was.
Right,
And then once we kind of decided to start a family, I was like, oh, this is perfect timing. So
right,
and
right,
I enjoy it.
right. Now, you talked about your other classmates. Is
Mhm.
this a field where there are a lot of people going into it? Is there a high demand when people do graduate with these degrees? How does that look?
There is a high demand, I think, in any field nowadays. There's a lot. But I'm trying to think, I think there was about 50 in my class, which now they've even made it smaller than that. And I think there's over 300 applicants. So it's pretty hard. And so, but yeah, and then I was in the Toledo area. So like all of the Toledo area was like super overpopulated because there was 50 of us all trying to find jobs. Um, but yeah, there's definitely a need for speech therapists.
Right, right. Are there places where they work other than in medical facilities and schools, or is that pretty much the two big ones?
Yeah, you can like you can do like outpatient. So like your private practice, like people do that. But yeah, the majority is like hospitals, nursing homes, schools. Yeah, that's probably where you'd find your main.
Are there many people that have their own business with speech therapy, or is that not really?
There are some. I think it just depends on where you're at. Like if there's a high demand, like even Finley, they don't have a ton of outpatient, so there's always a waiting list. So I think it helps when there's someone to do it. Like I have a coworker who she used to just kind of have it on the side. So like after school or in summer, she would pick up clients to make a little bit extra money and to help them because there is such a big need.
Right.
But so yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You also have on LinkedIn that you have a professional working proficiency in sign language.
Hmm.
Is that something that is typical? Are you required to learn sign language going into this field?
No, I honestly did it because I thought it sounded cool and it thought it looked good. But
Mhm.
I had a best friend in undergrad who her brother was actually deaf. So she was doing it and I was like, oh, well, that seems like a great thing. And they recommended, they were like, well, it looks good because we can work with deaf,
Right.
with kids or adults who are deaf, but it's not required, no, but I'm definitely a lot rustier than I used to be. But
Yeah. Well, again, I'm sure it comes in handy at times that
yeah,
even if there is a situation where you know a little bit of it, that
right.
makes it much easier
Mhm.
to communicate.
Yeah.
Now, is there any aspect of this career that maybe you didn't realize was going to be as significant as it is, but now that you're in it, you realize, wow, that was big, and it maybe would have been nice to recognize that before I got into the field, not necessarily to turn you off from being a speech
Right.
pathologist, but just plays a bigger role than maybe you realized.
I don't think there's necessarily anything that like I do feel like I was very well prepared going from grad school to, so I don't know if there was anything that was like, I guess that turned me off or was like shocking to me. I think it is interesting though to like be on the opposite side of a school, like being the teacher now and not the student and like learning and like advocating for students and being like, oh wow, like I wonder if I was like that, or just different things that I guess kind of that aspect, like it just surprises me how much goes into teaching and helping kids. And I don't know, like I even tell teachers now, I'm like, my first year now I think so differently just because it's a lot and I don't know, but
Right, right. If you had to talk about the best parts of this career and maybe the more challenging parts of this career, what would those be?
the best parts I would say are when you, I don't know, I something I really enjoyed about a nursing home is that you are changing kids' life or changing their lives. Like some of these people come in and have a feeding tube and they can't eat and they haven't ate for 6 weeks and you're having them eat again or learning, teaching them to talk again. So that was so cool. And I made it was just a very neat thing to watch and experience that with those patients. Um, and but in a school, the concept is very similar, like watching a kid get something they have not gotten or watching them improve astronomically on something that they've been working on, you've been working on, or finally the teacher's like, oh, I understand what they say. You finally feel like you're impacting them, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, and just in a nursing home, I was seeing people a half hour every day, 5 days a week. Where in a school, I don't get that opportunity. So it's a little bit harder to make that progress. Or when kids like sprint up to you and give you a hug or stuff like that. Like those are just things that I don't know are awesome.
Right.
Um, challenges, I think sometimes advocating and just in general for patients and for students. Um, like in a nursing home insurance, they can cut a patient at any minute when they're not ready. And
Right.
so that's hard. Um, and even like same within the school advocating, making sure they're getting all of their needs or everything. I think it's hard sometimes to not take work home. I think as a teacher, you know that, or not take the burden of your kids or students or something like that. Um, but that was one thing I always say was good about my first job is when I left, I had to be done. Like I couldn't bring paperwork home. I couldn't type at home where it's like now I can, but I feel like it did set a decent precedence that I'm decent at like doing that, compartmentalizing, I guess. But I'm sure my husband would say the opposite, but I definitely, I don't know. So I guess those are the.
Right. Now, as you think about going to the University of Toledo, is that a school that's well known for a speech pathology degree? Are there others in Ohio that maybe have a higher prevalence of those, or is it pretty much a lot of schools have the program and they all do a good job?
Yeah, I think for a while UT was really well known. Like we had a professor there who stuttered and he did a international stuttering clinic, so they were pretty well known for that. So we would get people from all over the world coming to the Toledo just for that. So I think they were well known. And Toledo was, I think it was Toledo and there's maybe Bowling Green, or were the only two schools in Ohio that actually, as an undergrad, I got a client, which is cool for like experience. And like when you're going to grad school saying you've already done that, that's neat.
Right.
I think like some schools have just the undergraduate and not the graduate. So I think sometimes when they just have undergrad, it's a little bit harder because like me, I was able to go to UT for my entire career. And it's at UT, at least they accept more of their undergrads than like outside undergrad. So I had a little bit better shot getting in there. Bowling Green is pretty well known too, which is ironic because they're so close together. But
right. Okay, so yeah, that is interesting too, with being able to do all 6 years in one place, and it is a 6-year degree. Do they have any fast track or anything like that?
No, so it's 4 years of undergrad, and then it's like a 5-semester graduate school. So you're off right after you graduate, and then you basically go year round. Like I had 2 weeks off in the summer, and then went back to school.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Madison, very insightful. And as we wrap up, I always ask every guest, what do you know now about careers that you wish you had known when you were in high school?
Even in our career, we're all still learning and we're all still adjusting to everything, and that it's okay to mess up and to admit that and continue to, work hard. I feel like I wish I could tell my younger self it's okay to struggle, and that's okay. You can still become what you want to become.
Right. And a lot of times that's where the growth takes place, is through those struggles. So
yeah.
Madison, really appreciate it. Sounds like you're doing really well in your career. And I hope that hopefully some people reach out to you and ask some additional questions in case they're interested in this as a career field. So good luck as you continue on your career journey.
All right. Thank you.
If you liked this Joust About Careers episode, you can explore previous episodes and highlights to learn about even more careers of Van Buren graduates. To be sure you don't miss upcoming episodes, please click subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you'll know when the next episode is released. Thank you for spending a portion of your day with us, and we hope you will continue to prepare for your future by learning just about careers.